Hello, welcome everybody to Threshold episode 2, and today I have joining me Kyle. How's it going, Kyle?
It's going good. Excited to be here.
Me too. I've been looking forward to this, like when I first got in the program and I always loved historical architecture, and one of the people that I met that really had the same enjoyment for it as me that I could find was Kyle, so it's been good to know him. So I thought with episode 2, I thought I could get him on, and he's been on the French trip, and he's a great photographer. If you want to check out his page, I'll leave the link in the bio.
At Kyle Abts Photography.
Yep. So he's got a lot of good stuff on there, and he's going to showcase a lot of it for us. So yeah, we're going to get into these slideshows at the end. I have a little something I put together too of historical architecture, but yeah, it's going to be good. Think of it like 102, but a little bit different. A little bit, yeah. So first of all, you went on the French trip, right?
I did with Professor Keene.
Yeah.
Right before he retired. It was great. I met so many amazing people on that trip. But the places we got to see were incredible. So we stayed like 2 months in Paris. We were given an apartment with some roommates from, the school, and we basically met each weekday at a different site around Paris, and we looked at different historic buildings from like medieval Roman stuff all the way to like Lake Corbusier and Frank Gehry and stuff like that.
Wow. So you got the whole spectrum, and you weren't just in France, right? You went all over Europe.
Right.
Yeah, and that's that's something that I relate to you on, because as you'll see in the photos that I put in my slideshow later, is I was lucky enough, like Kyle, to have taken a trip to Europe and experienced the feeling you get when you see those old historic buildings and you see the real history that lies behind them. It's just something that you can't really find here in America, unfortunately. But being there and seeing that is just a crazy feeling. So with this podcast, I hope we can give you some of that feeling and kind of just inspired. But yeah.
Right. I've got a lot of photos from all the places I went that you'll see in my presentation. So
yeah,
let's get started.
So we can get into that. So what's going to be on this presentation, just for the people that can't wait?
Just the buttons over there work.
Oh yeah.
So on this presentation, it's going to be a lot of photos. They're all my photos from the trip and also from other trips I've taken, as well as just historical architecture from around Wisconsin as well. You'll see at the end. So
yeah. So we have
great
traditional and vernacular architecture.
Yeah. So vernacular architecture is basically architecture that's made in a certain geographic location that represents that location through the materials and the design and lots of other aspects that really let the architecture define the place, rather than vice versa. And so, as you'll see here, we have obviously French architecture. You can tell by a lot of the beautiful stone that you can see. It's all a very similar color in France, and the steep roofs you see on the left, that's Chateau des Sceaux, and that's one of the iconic architectural elements of French architecture, those steep mansard roofs.
Yeah, wow, and I can see too on this church is just the ornate detail is insane, and also in these timber frame houses here, you'll see later when I do my presentation, I have some English architecture, and you can see the similarities, because when you're talking about vernacular architecture, England isn't that far from France, so those things do develop in the same ways, and you'll see how France did invade England, and that did have a huge play in the architecture. So
right.
Yeah. So what else do we have here?
So the middle one is Église Val de Grace, which was built for Louis XIV, the Sun King, by his mother.
Wow.
And yeah, it's a beautiful, really early Baroque architecture piece, and yeah, it was just amazing getting to see that. And it's one of the first Baroque pieces by Mansart. I forget his first name. There's 2 Mansarts, but yeah, it's one of the very early Baroque buildings, and you can just see the gorgeous details that would go on to influence further French architecture, especially in the 19th century. A lot of the buildings in Paris with Haussmann and Napoleon III and their whole redesigning of Paris would be influenced by the Baroque design of these early churches from, I believe this one was built in the 1600s.
Wow.
I don't know, or 1500s. Wait.
Could have been built yesterday and you wouldn't be able to tell almost.
Exactly. It's just what I love about traditional / vernacular architecture is it's timeless.
Yeah, it really is. Like,
Yeah.
you can see like in Milwaukee, for example, in some neighborhoods, you can still see these timber framing being used in the houses. It's not as genuine, like, because this is really like all the wall are these sticks, and then like the mud and straw that's like packed in between them, and that's really all it is. And like these things, is there anything special about these houses, or is it just like the hundreds of them that just pop up everywhere?
These are some of the only few left in Paris that are like original wood frame buildings. Like all the other medieval buildings were torn down and replaced by, more stone ones in the 18th, 19th, 20th century. So
After being destroyed in World War II, too, mostly.
Paris wasn't affected by World War II, thank God.
Okay.
But no, just like urban development over time.
Yeah, understandable.
This is
what do we have here?
This is like a garden pavilion at Chateau de Versailles, and it's just another example of beautiful traditional architecture. And why I think it's so great is just look at the amount of detail. I mean, you could sit and look at that for hours.
It's fractal. It's you just get lost in that. Like
it's amazing.
That's incredible.
These are some more examples of some French architecture, and you had these public buildings. The one on the very left is an opera house in Paris, the Opera Garnier, and you can just see. Imagine going to an opera there. You walk in, and maybe you don't like opera, but look at that. You're in this like amazing building.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to go there?
Yeah.
The one below, the picture below is a train station, and like even.
Okay.
If you're going to another city, you get to go into this beautiful station, and it's just fun just going to the station because it's beautiful. I mean, the beauty of these buildings
I'm sure the inside is just humongous and open and vaulted.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I don't remember what exact station that is, but
yeah, just look at the tops and
right.
all that detail. And I just love in French architecture how they replicate like the leaves and like vegetation in like such an elegant way where you can tell it's not natural, but it just looks like looks natural somehow. It just adds up somehow. I don't know.
Right.
But also on this building right here, just to point out these columns that are just looks like a huge piece of rock.
It's marble.
Yeah, just straight marble. Like that is just solid, and the grain in it is beautiful. Like, what is this place?
You don't know?
Is it Versailles?
It is
Versailles. Okay,
Chateau de
okay.
Versailles.
Okay.
Louis XIV's
Nice.
massive palace.
Yeah, I think it's funny how, like, it was described, like, as you get close to the center, it's super elegant and beautiful, and the farther away you get from the center, the like, least elegant it gets. Like, maybe the slave quarters are all the way on that side, but I'm sure it's still great.
It's beautiful.
Did you walk around the whole thing?
Yeah, all the gardens and everything, and
Wow.
from everywhere you can basically see the palace. It's just huge.
Nice.
Really an incredible place. But yeah, you can just see the beauty and detail that's in every element of this traditional architecture, and that's what I love so much. You'll see some more examples in the following slides.
Yeah, let's get to it. Ooh.
Yeah, here's an example of French Gothic on the left. I mean, there's no words for it. It's just incredible what they could do.
Yeah.
And that's the 1100s, I believe, or no,
Wow.
1300s. One of those two, but
Almost 1,000 years old.
right. And yeah, this is Sainte-Chapelle, by the way. It was made by Louis IX, and it originally housed the crown of thorns.
And this was just like his own like private room, right?
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And then on the right is like a public space. So the World's Fair was held in Paris. This was built along with like the Eiffel Tower at the same fair.
Oh wow.
And it just shows the grandeur of these public buildings in Paris that, make people excited to go out and see stuff. I mean, this architecture you want to go visit, you want to go into. I mean, look at that gateway there.
Yeah, no, that's just calling you to go in.
Right?
And the Golden Gateway just.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a lovely little museum in there, so
Oh,
if
yeah,
you're ever in
sure.
Paris, I'd recommend that.
Okay,
It's the
nice.
Petite Palace.
Petite Palace.
some medieval details. On the left, we have a church in San Malo, and you can just see how that Gothic architecture just was really dependent on the glass,
Yeah.
the light coming into the
No
church.
need for artificial lighting whatsoever.
Right.
Is
Just creates a place of magic
yeah.
in a way.
Wow.
Yeah, on the right, I put in that picture because I wanted to show some of the fun details that the medieval people put into their architecture. They'd make their water spouts gargoyles, so they shaped them like monsters, and so when it rains, it'd come out their mouths. They're just having fun with the architecture.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's a cool medieval element.
I've actually been here on the left.
San Eustache?
Yeah, I can't not forget that ceiling. But yeah, tell us more about it.
Not much to say. I mean, it's just more examples of
Yeah.
beautiful, amazing French architecture. Same with right, that's Saint-Sulpice. I hope I'm pronouncing it right, but
Yeah.
it's just there's something about traditional architecture that really helps define a city and make it somewhere that you want to visit and really walk around and explore.
Just churches in general, if you are realizing this common theme that back then that was everything to them, and if they needed an excuse to build something so grand, that was it, and they went all out, as you can see here. And yeah, it's just incredible to see how they're just still here in perfect condition, thanks to a lot of people who care about them and keep them up. But
Yeah, here's some more examples of interiors of traditional architecture. On the left, we have the chapel at Versailles, like the private chapel of the king and all that, and you can just see all the detail that goes into every element of everything. Like, they thought about everything. Same with on the right, that's the Palace of Nymphenburg, just outside of Munich. Again, it's just this grand room that just catches your eye. Anywhere you look, it draws your eye to it. And
I've been there too.
Really?
In that palace in Munich.
okay, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
went inside, and it's cool how it's just the one big room in the middle for everyone to gather. I'm sure they had some amazing gatherings in there, and I don't even know how I would act if I was there at a gathering. I wouldn't probably be talking to anyone. I'd probably be walking around. My head would be up the whole time.
Literally.
But yeah, that's great. And the chandeliers, wow.
Yeah, just
And the
incredible
paintings,
stuff.
the amount of craftsmen that would have to come in to do every single detail in these places is incredible. Someone would come in for the floors, for painting the details, and then someone would have to make those details, and then someone would have to paint the ceiling.
Okay, so on the right you have Vallée au Vicomte, which is just a gorgeous palace outside of Paris, and again, it's just so much detail. On the left is another public building out in a park in Paris, and again, just so much beauty and thought went into every building, and it makes it a very nice place to visit.
Yeah, I like how on the left, just something I'm pointing out, I like how on the left on the tower you can see this stuff right here. It's following the path of the stairs that I'm sure are in there. You can kind of see a railing in there. Yeah, no, that's cool.
All right, so here I want to talk about the importance of skylines, skylines, and what makes cities so great. All these examples are cities I went to. One of them is Disneyland Paris, but European skylines are defined by all these beautiful spires, these ornate things that you can see from distances, and they don't completely block up the view of nature or anything in the background, like a lot of American cities with skyscrapers. And it's just, I don't know, there's something about European cities and their skylines. It's very human scaled. You have the most important buildings very tall.
They were designed around humans.
Right. The most important buildings are the tallest, the one churches, civic buildings, etc.
Yeah.
And it draws your eye to them wherever you are in the city. So.
And the buildings that are the most important, they rise up and assert their dominance. In the bottom left, you can see the castle, how it kind of just comes out of the mountain to just shadow over everything. It's pretty amazing.
Right.
Speaking of,
one of the best skylines, Mont Saint Michel and France just had to add that in there just because of how amazing it is. You have this
Yeah.
flat land. It's actually an island, but just a flat landscape, and you just have this mountain coming up and a giant church. It's there's no words for it. It's just gorgeous if you ever get to visit.
Yeah, no,
Definitely
this is something I've seen hundreds of pictures of in all of its different conditions. But like the sea level rises and comes down and stuff, right? So
Yeah, they actually they built this bridge here because when there was like a high tide, you couldn't get to the island. So now you can get there all year round because of that bridge that they added.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I have some slides here that show the importance of like having things at the end of your street. A lot of times in America, you'll have streets that are completely gridded, and you look down them and you can't really see anything. It's just buildings for miles.
Yeah, I love that about those small villages. Is the streets are so randomly planned out, and there's no grid whatsoever. It's just complete. I don't know how it happened, but it just happened that way. And so it forms all of these curves, and basically it's surprises because you always walk down the block here, and you know there's going to be another block. But there it's like, oh, there's a nice little alleyway that takes you to a different street, or this and that, and it kind of just keeps you wanting to keep exploring.
Yeah, and eventually you'll turn down one street and you'll see something like this, like a big monument in the city, and you'll be like, okay, got to go down this street.
And then you just see that, and then you kind of got to find your way through all the maze to get there somehow.
Right.
Yeah, it gives you something to look forward to.
By the way, love this building on the right. It's like a Orthodox church in Venice. I love how it's just leaning compared to.
You can see that it's
so
something's
cool.
a little off there, but I'm sure it'll be fine.
Again, more examples of things that draw your attention that you want to walk to.
Yeah.
You have the Pantheon on the right in Paris, and then Hohensalzburg Castle and some of the churches of Salzburg on the left.
Yeah, beautiful.
More examples. On the left you have Tours Cathedral, and yeah, you're just drawn there. Same with on the right is Vincenza, and you can see Palladio's Basilica down there. It's like a classical structure in the middle of this like organic medieval city, and your eye is drawn there and you want to go and check out what that is. It's this new modern type of architecture.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that was groundbreaking back then.
Absolutely. More examples of just, things that catch your attention when you're walking down streets in cities.
Yeah, I'm glad that you pointed this out because in my slides later you'll see examples that are just like this. So that's nice.
These slides, I wanted to talk about like how classical architecture really blends in with nature and what's a word for it? Like enhances it.
Yeah.
And so you can see you have this beautiful garden, and then you have this gorgeous white marble church just growing through the trees almost.
And I think something that has to do with that is how they would plan out the nature with that architecture. Like you can see in a lot of these things, these gardens, if you looked at from an aerial view, would have a very precise plan that would relate to the building itself, and so it would kind of bring it all together in ways like that.
Oh, right, exactly. And all these old traditional buildings used local materials as well, which was super important. And it helped show that these buildings were in touch with nature. And yeah.
Yeah, nice.
More examples.
Yeah.
Just the architecture just grows out of the nature almost like it was made for it.
I love how the bushes have the same like arch as the windows behind it, for example.
Right.
And
more examples of some beautiful architecture. And
where's this on the left? It looks
Venice.
Venice.
Yes.
Okay.
This part I want to talk about like how, great cities have these amazing public spaces, these amazing places that people, get to interact with in their city. They're places that are beautiful to go to and to be in. I mean, wouldn't you want to just like go to either of these places and just chill doing whatever? I mean, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You have all this beauty around you, and that's what I love about these like old cities is they have these public spaces for people to just enjoy the beauty of life.
Public spaces. I love how it'll be something like that, and then they'll take out a plot of land and they'll say, okay, this is just going to be nothing, and they know that people will just gather there naturally.
Mm-hmm.
So it creates that nice environment.
Again, more beautiful public spaces and big buildings, and on the left or on the right you have a bridge. Again,
those
just
old style bridges.
Right, it's just gorgeous.
Ornate iron.
Yeah, they put so much like time and effort into something so structural and
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Here, I just wanted to show the beauty of Paris and how its architecture has grown over time. On the very right, you have like the medieval stuff. But again, as you look through these pictures, notice how the architecture all still kind of stays the same, and like it defines the city. Like all the architecture fits in. Like when you see any of these photos, you're like, okay, that's Paris. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's France.
It's gotta be.
It's just the stone, the way the buildings are built. So on the right, you have like a medieval structure. The middle looks around like 1600s, probably 1700s.
Yeah.
On the very left, you have the Haussmann, like 19th century new developments. And
I love on the right side how it may have been built medieval perhaps, but over time they kind of modernized it in their own way. But it looks very old now, but at the time it probably would have been like a crazy new addition or something, or a really big renovation. But it's still, they still stay to their roots when they do that.
right. More examples of just beautiful
France.
Paris, and again, the architecture defines the city. Wherever you go, you know you're in Paris because of the buildings. They're all very similar, but each one's a little bit different, and it makes just an iconic place. More streets within Paris, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about later with like the curving streets, and you go
Yeah.
down and you're like, oh, what's down here?
Yeah,
Looks
you can see
interesting.
at the end of this one, there's like multiple options you could take. You could go there, you could go there, probably somewhere this way, never
Right.
know.
Of course, the
Classic.
Louvre had to
Of course.
add that. Just an amazing public space. Wasn't always that. It was once a palace, but now it's the iconic museum that everyone knows and loves.
Yeah.
This slide I wanted to talk about, historical restoration and all that. This is like an amazing medieval castle that I got to visit. It's called Chateau de Pierrefonds, and it was destroyed in like the 1400s, I think, in one of the many wars France was in, and it just was left to rot. You can see what the ruins looked like in the top middle photo, and Napoleon III came and visited this village and saw the castle and was like, okay, we're going to restore that. So he hired Viollet-le-Duc, who did the restoration on Notre Dame de Paris, and they got him to restore this. It's not exactly how it was back in medieval times, but it's a very, very close replica.
Yeah, they made it more livable,
Yeah, more exciting to see too. I
Yeah.
mean, the original thing was, a fortification.
Yeah,
it wasn't
for
made
pure battle, and they
Right.
made it, yeah.
so that he added a lot of like architectural elements for beauty and just cool things to go and see as like a tourist site rather than a building for war.
Yeah, I would love to see these models in person and just kind of hover over them and see every detail.
Mm-hmm.
I also love how at the base of towers in general, but these towers, how they get wider at the bottom. It kind of just shows how sturdy and strong they were
Right.
or are.
Yeah, here I wanted to talk about how we don't have a lack of traditional architecture in America too. I mean, these are all from Wisconsin alone. In a way, I would say we have basically the same thing as medieval European architecture, because when the immigrants came over here, they used what they could find, like wood and stone and mud and all that, to build what they could. I mean, it's literally the same as like early medieval peasants building their houses.
Yeah,
And so
pretty much.
it's very similar to a lot of the old European stuff that you'll see in the next slide. Yeah, this is all like European architecture, but I was surprised when I went. I'm like, America basically has the same exact thing.
Yeah, I like this right here. Looks very similar to these two.
Right.
Yeah, and the log cabin is very classic. That pops up everywhere also,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just as vernacular as it gets. If there's trees around, you get the logs and you make the log cabin. Like
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to talk about that top photo that you were talking about.
Where is this?
Atsalan.
That's on. Okay.
And Atsalan is actually a medieval Native American site.
Hmm.
And so right next to this little village here, there's like a bunch of these mounds and pyramids that were left by these Native Americans that lived
Wow.
there I think it was inhabited like in the BC times, and then it was at its it was at its height in like the 1100s AD. And
Yeah.
I find that incredible that we had these like cities here in America,
Yeah,
you know.
that are forgotten completely, and me and Kyle could talk about history all day. So honestly, we'll probably do some other episodes on more American, like Native American architecture, and that gets super vernacular. Like if you go to the south, you get pueblos.
Right.
We'll talk about the pueblos that are in the canyons with the stone that's just lying around. You know, they didn't make anything out of wood there.
Mm-hmm.
And then here, there's an abundance of dirt. So.
But yeah, that's exactly what I love about vernacular architecture.
Yeah.
It defines a place and a culture,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's so wonderful compared to a lot of the global architecture that we have today. Nothing wrong about it necessarily, but
The thing about today is they're just trying to make the most cost-effective thing and
Right.
the most productive building, because a lot of things that are going on in those buildings are like offices, and they need productivity. So, but yeah,
I think we need to focus a lot more on using local materials for
Mm-hmm.
our buildings and more local designs as well. Instead of just building, the copy and paste sort of buildings, we need to go back to our roots of, where we live and
I agree.
replicate the architecture of the past to really define a place, define Wisconsin. I mean, take influence from these buildings and the ones you'll see later as well. I have some more
Well
pictures.
said.
So here's some more examples of, vernacular Wisconsin architecture. And again, it's just gorgeous stuff. It looks like
Wow.
it could be Europe even.
Yeah, very German, because they were all German settlers. But
Right.
yeah, I love this one right here. This is just the most classic log cabin with the chimney in the back, and God, I love these old barns.
Mm-hmm.
I really love barns. We could do a whole episode about barns even.
I
but
know.
Yeah,
Oh, I love barns too. It's just classic Americana stuff.
get it done. Yeah.
And of course, Wisconsin is known for its famous Cream City brick, and
Exactly.
here's some examples of that. So
Yeah, wonderful.
again,
It's
we're
not just Milwaukee that has it.
Yeah, it's not just Europe that's old and like historical and has culture and style and vernacular architecture, but America has this wonderful diversity of architectural history as well, and you can see that especially in Wisconsin with our
Yeah.
Cream City brick buildings.
Of course.
Also, I want to show that not all is lost. We have some wonderful towns in America that preserve our history and aren't. What's a nice word for this?
Taken over by development or something. I don't know.
Right,
Yeah.
by modernity, you could say.
Yeah, and Galena is amazing. I've been there before, and I really encourage you to go if you haven't. It's really just taking a step back in the past. Like every neighborhood, every house is just in pristine condition, and all the people that live there understand the importance, and definitely shows when you go there. The downtown is beautiful condition as well.
Yeah, you'll see that on the next slide. But Galena is just an incredible city, very well preserved from the 19th century is when it was founded, and all the buildings are from that time. It just never had any modern development or urban renewal. Thank God.
Yeah, well.
But
And I went there, and like just in probably this store or something, like if you go into these stores, they keep the inside like preserved too. Like I went in an old candy store, for example, or something. There's just old specialty stores that you wouldn't find anymore because of like supermarkets or things like that.
Mhm.
That back then, this was the whole supermarket. This whole thing right here, just had
Right.
everything you needed, and then you could just go back and Like again, this is a beautiful skyline. You look at the buildings on here, the river,
Yeah.
and there's a tree line, and then there's some steeples sticking out. Yeah, it's just
no,
it's
Oliver,
great.
that's perfect. I didn't even think about that, but it's like the same as a lot of the European
That
skylines.
is very similar.
Yeah.
Has those similarities.
So we do have great things here.
We do.
Take advantage of them. Here we have Delafield, Wisconsin, which is very close to where I grew up.
Oh, I've been here also.
Yeah,
That's
it's a gorgeous town. All these buildings were built in like the 90s, early 2000s, and you would think this is like an old colonial, like American town out east or something. It's just absolutely amazing.
It is.
And it shows that we can still build like this. It's, this isn't lost architecture. And, yeah, it's just, I definitely recommend, if you like this sort of thing, to visit Delafield.
Yeah, when I went there, I was really caught off guard because I saw those buildings and I was being on question. I was like, wait a second, I like what they did here. So, yeah,
Right.
that was cool.
The next photo is the same thing. It's actually the last slide, but you can see more awesome traditional architecture that they had there. You can see they even built a castle. There's a military academy there called St. John's, and they were influenced by like medieval English architecture, and you can see the influence of that in like the castle
Yeah,
and even the town. Like it's like a old British, like
Yeah.
colonial sort of thing.
where's this? Sorry.
Where is this?
Yeah.
Maybe 30 minutes west of Milwaukee,
Okay.
in between. Yeah, it's just east of Oconomowoc.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's it for my presentation.
Yeah, that was great. I thought you touched on a lot of really important things, and you had some amazing photos. But yeah, talked on some really good things. So I have a little presentation too. It's gonna be pretty similar, but yeah. Hope. All right, what's up now? On to my presentation. So Kyle's kind of covered on a lot of good things, and I just wanted to start up my presentation by staying in the same ways. I'm going to be talking about history too, and something that I love about history is castles. So I want to get into castles. So first of all, castles are different than what you would probably imagine. Like, castles have or fortifications are different than castles in certain ways, and we'll get into that. So there's always been forts, like ever since like the ancient Greeks and before that. Like, people have always built walls, to defend themselves and defend them villages. But the thing with the castle was, it all started when William Conqueror, the Norman king, decided that in 1066 he wanted to invade England, and he came from Normandy, France, and decided that he wanted to invade England. And his way of invading England was very unique because he revolutionized something called the Moat and Bailey Castle. And the Moat and Bailey Castle is very, very important to the English conquest and just castles in general. So we can see with this diagram, this is what he would do. Basically, he was occupying England, so what he would do was all of the people that were living there, they obviously didn't want to be occupied, and they did not like this presence. So he needed to find a way to control the citizens and keep them under control, basically, while keeping them safe, because he still cared about, taking over England. So what he made was the Moat and Bailey. So you can see the main feature was a large mound, and then on top would be when they first made it, they wanted to get these things up as quick as possible. So it started as a wooden fortifications mainly, and over time, as whoever was living there would gain more riches and get richer, they would be able to afford, something like this. Now this is a big leap, but you'll see in my next photos kind of the in-between of these things. So yeah, it was kind of like think of it as like a guard tower, kind of looking over, the village, making sure no protests broke out or there wasn't any uprisings or anything like that, because this was during 1066 and the things were just crazy then. So yeah, you kind of get into that, turns into this. You get the wooden fort, and what makes our castles different than forts is the keep, mainly, because the keep is kind of like the heart to it all. This is where most of everything is kept, hence keep, like grain, food, riches, money, and then also where people could sleep if they weren't sleeping in the other buildings that would be in the Bailey. And then as they get bigger, you kind of just keep adding layers and layers and just making it as defensive as possible.
And really, city walls were part of the castle, but they were protecting the village that was surrounding the original castle. But in a way, the whole city was the castle.
Exactly. So yeah, it's kind of cool. You'll see it later in the slide. York is a great example of that. So I just want to do some before and afters because I think it's interesting to see how these things still impact the area around. For example, here we have Bletchley Castle in England, and it's a very like you can clearly see the moat and Bailey here. This is where the fort would have been, and there's the moat that's still here, and then you can see the dirt that was brought up to kind of make those walls more prominent. And then the only thing that's surviving now is the old wooden bridge, but this is what it would have looked like back then, and you can kind of see it's that kind of wood timber framing that we've seen in Kyle's presentation, and they kind of keep that same thing going on, and then everything kind of stems out from this here, and more of the respected nobles would probably have lived in here, and then more of the common folk would have lived in the outskirts. But I just really love the Moat and Bailey castles. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super cool stuff.
And then next we have Scarborough Castle. This is what it looks like now in ruins. You can see the similarities. It's kind of a big courtyard, and you have this big keep here made out of stone. And then this is what it would have looked like back then. And you can see the grandness of it. It's just amazing. Like seeing something like that would really put fear into your eyes if you were trying to attack that, because it looks impenetrable. Like this hill up to the wall, all of that.
Crazy.
Yeah, and it's like it would look good in the skyline because it's sitting on top of a hill, and then the rest of the village is kind of down here.
Yeah, in a lot of ways like the Hohensalzburg Castle in Austria.
Yeah.
Very similar, just this is English.
And then just another before and after. This is Whitby, in England, and it's an abbey, and that was something really interesting about those medieval times. Is there would be these whole massive, beautiful churches built for the privacy of the monks who would live on the grounds, and they would be able to enjoy these places for their own and kind of just live a very holy life. And honestly, it would probably be a pretty chill life. You just get to wander around here all the time and do what you love. But yeah.
I have a question. Have they ever restored any of these old ruins? Or castles?
In England, I think one thing that I noticed, because when I was a sophomore in high school, I lived in England for a year, so that's how I was able to know about this stuff. I guess I've visited Whitby, for example, and you'll see in the photos on my other slides. But England I feel like England likes to keep their castles as pure as possible, not kind of as much how France would add on more stuff like that,
like pierre-fonds.
Yeah, I feel like they kind of if it's a defensive fort, they kind of keep it like that. And maybe there is a lot of examples though of how maybe if there's a castle on the land and if there's important family onto it that have stayed on that land over time, they will update it and turn it into more of a manor style home.
Yeah.
But places like these, like abbeys, for example, there are ruins of abbeys scattered all across.
King Henry VIII.
Yeah. Scattered all. Yeah. You'll see some examples of that in York, where King Henry VIII resided, and you can really see his effect on the city. And it's kind of sad, but yeah, they usually just leave the ruins as it is because it's kind of beautiful, it's just sitting there and peacefully. So yeah, let's get into York. And York is where I lived, just off the right here. And
awesome.
It is an incredible city, and it's just completely preserved. And in the medieval times, you go there and there's multiple streets that you walk through that you will see in my slideshow where you literally get taken back in time, and it's truly an incredible experience. And how Kyle was talking about before, how castles were turned into cities, you can see that clearly happen here, and you can kind of see the outline of where the whole city wall was.
Is the whole thing still intact, or?
Yeah, a majority of the city wall is still intact, and the best part about it is it's free to just walk on. It's basically just a sidewalk.
Incredible.
At that point, yeah.
You'll see that in a lot of Dutch towns, actually.
Oh, really?
They built their cities like forts, so they'd be islands with moats around them. And today, most of the time, the forts that are surrounding the town in the center are parks that you can walk around the entire outline of the city.
Yeah.
I think that's so cool. I actually love that. I think we could use that today in modern urban planning.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great part.
I wish I had an example of some Dutch towns, but
hey,
maybe for another podcast.
Another one. You guys will definitely see another one. But yeah, this is just kind of a quick photo of York, kind of what it was. As you can see here, Clifford's Tower, another beautiful example of a moat and bailey castle here. You got the moat and then the bailey, and you can see the walls wrap around all the way to the cathedral, the York Minster, which is the second largest building in Europe, I'm pretty sure, or second largest cathedral. And you can kind of see how it hasn't much hasn't changed. You can still see the wall here wrap around, as you can see it here, and it wraps around to the cathedral, which is still here. And this is the Clifford's Tower, and that is the original tower of the Moat and Bailey. It used to be wood, you know, they made it into this, and that was good enough. And you can really see how it was. And one thing that I love about this section is it shows you how thick these castle walls were and how solid they were. Like, you can see these slits is about all they had for windows, and the rest was just pure solid. And yeah,
Purely defense reasons.
Yeah,
The windows are like that, right?
yeah.
For arrow,
Mm-hmm.
they could shoot out but not get shot back at.
Yeah, and even defensive is, fun fact, all medieval spiral staircases spiral left, because if the attacker was coming from underneath, the defender would be able to use their right hand to kind of swing around the stairs to get the person attacking. And the person attacking would have a disadvantage of the lower ground and all that stuff.
That's cool.
You can also see how these castles weren't just pure stone. They incremented a lot of timber framing into these castles. Like the floor would be stone. Sometimes the floor would be stone. It would be vaulted, but that would be expensive. So
Is that castle like completely ruined on the inside, or have they rebuilt some of the interiors?
that's actually interesting, and I actually want to get my friend on, because my friend actually ended up going into carpentry, and they ended up renovating the inside and
Really?
adding like platforms so you can get a better walk and look around. So
Really?
the inside is mostly just a shell. There's
Okay.
nothing in there, but it's still really cool.
Yeah.
And you can actually still walk up on the ledge up there. As you can see, there are some rails.
Mhm.
But yeah, the inside is mostly hollow, but they did just add a new platform and stuff into there. He's also worked on some other cool things, historical projects in England, so I'd love to get him on. Joel, if you're watching. But yeah, here's another graphic of, classic Moat and Bailey here. I think this is probably my favorite one, and it's just like a maxed out Moat and Bailey, I guess you could say, like pure all stone, huge gate, multiple towers, another gate, another layer of walls. But yeah,
It's like a level 12
yeah,
town hall of Clash of Clans.
yeah, pretty much. That's what it is. And then also, what's interesting about York is it was occupied by the Romans in the early 80s, like 100, 200-ish timeline there, and they built these huge forts. And you can kind of see here, I think it's cool, the English redeveloped them and like made them their own. You can kind of see right here was where the Romans would have built. You can still see the old brick from the inside, and then kind of from there on would have been like English fortifications. So yeah, and then this is what a Roman fort would have looked like. And you can kind of see it's a lot different than a castle, because there's no keep, it's kind of just the walls.
Yeah.
And do you think there's anything unique about like French castles, for example, over like Italian or like Dutch? You're saying, like, what do you think really makes a French castle French?
Very tall round towers.
Very tall round towers.
And walls in general. They're just very tall.
Yeah, and also the pitched roof on
Yes,
top of the towers.
pitched
That's
roof.
always something I see in French castles.
And that history of the pitched roofs went on to like influence their later
Yeah,
architecture, like
exactly.
some of the Baroque stuff.
Yeah, like
and,
you were talking about in the beginning.
yeah, in Paris even today, and modern times, it's incredible.
Yeah, I love the vernacular. So now let's talk about the York Minster, the beautiful cathedral that York has, and the cool part about it is I wish I had some pictures, but in the basement is the old foundation of the Norman church that sat on this site before the York Minster was here. and it's just it is just the most breathtaking thing. Like, the amount of detail and the size of this thing is massive. It's like 2 skyscrapers, but made out of stone, and with the incredible craftsmanship that you can see into it. And it's just, you could look at that like all day.
Yeah, English cathedrals are underrated, man.
Yeah.
Like they're very similar to the French in a way.
Exactly.
They have their own unique
You can
look.
see the influence, and there are slight differences here and there, but it would be, yeah.
Have you been to Lincoln in the UK?
Lincoln in the UK? No, I don't think so.
Go there. You should look that up sometime.
Okay.
It's a crazy cathedral, similar to this as well.
Nice.
But the English are just great at it.
Yeah, here's another view from the left side. You can see these buttresses and
Very similar to the French, and I think
Yeah.
it is from that Norman influence.
exactly. The Normans really came over, and something very Norman are like these arches, for example, but
Yeah.
they would be more rounded, and this is kind of just something from a Gothic influence, because this is a very Gothic cathedral.
Where was Gothic architecture founded?
France. So there you go. And yeah, and I believe that this was completed in the Renaissance, I want to say, early
Wow.
Renaissance, but it was groundbreaking, I'd say, like, yeah, all the way in the medieval times, like early 1200, 1300s, I'd say. I don't know exactly, but it's old. And there's a lot of care that goes into this building. They upkeep it a lot. I'm pretty sure the roof's caught on fire before too.
Really?
So
It does look more modern.
it's been through a lot, yeah. It's been through a lot. This is a doorway, and
I always wonder how these stone cathedrals even start on fire. 'Cause they're
yeah,
stone,
right.
but
I know.
I guess the roofs
Didn't
are made out of wood.
wasn't that like electrical Notre Dame?
Yeah, I think they're doing construction, and one of the power tools like started a fire or something.
Oh boy. Yeah, just
Very
mistakes,
sad.
I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, the doorways just each layer has like a whole story.
Are these your photos?
Yeah, these are my photos.
Nice.
The everything since the York side are my photos. So this is the back side of the
Wow.
church, and this is the window from looking outside, and you can see this is like a very European thing. This isn't really closed off or anything. This is open for people to wander around and just chill. And there was many times where I would just come here to relax and look at this. And this is the view of that window from inside.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. But there's a whole lot, like even behind where that photo was taken too.
Yeah, off to the sides. Yeah, right underneath this part here is the actual Norman
Really?
vaulted ceilings from the original church that was there. So it's pretty interesting to go in under there and see the real history of why this is how it is. And again, like, you don't need these lights,
No.
these little lights here. There's a window.
You need to get rid of those.
Yeah, this window does it justice.
Right.
And yeah,
It's got a very religious meaning to it.
yeah. What would that be?
Well, Jesus is the light of the world, and in the darkness, all you can
Yeah.
see is the light.
Yeah.
And the same way, like, this cathedral is a closed structure, but you have these large windows in there that bring in the light, bring in the
Exactly.
goodness, the righteousness, etc.
Yeah, and all the beautiful things that it passes through, and the colors, all of those the bunch of colors. You're not seeing a bunch of blue and red light and green light and all this light. It all kind of blends into a white, glowing, beautiful light.
Yeah. I could just stare at that all day.
Yeah, and it's really incredible. This window is very grand. The window on the other side is pretty amazing too, and it has the circle window. But this one, I think, really just took the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's really cool about it are these stone mullions too, and they're like, you would think it would be like pretty, like, not that structural, because it's structural, but like I just feel like it would be, what's the word, like, it could break easily because these are so thin and stone,
Yeah.
and it's just glass. It's almost like you could go up and touch it like that and it would like crack and shatter. But
Yeah.
it's just amazing that it's still there.
I wonder if like any any bad people ever like throw rocks at
Yeah,
the windows
that
anytime,
would
or are
be
they
messed
protected? Because like you'd
I
think
don't
there's some
know.
like bad
Yeah,
people
you
that
would
would do
think
that.
that it would. Yeah, well, I'm sure someone's done that in the lifetime, and I'm sure they just repair it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I wonder if how often that happens.
yeah,
if ever.
right. That would be pretty tempting if you didn't have the appreciation me and Kyle have.
Yeah.
But
Right.
yeah, no, that would be hopefully not.
Yeah.
And then now I want to talk about, you were talking about Henry VIII, and what happened there was he didn't believe with like Catholic. I
Catholic
think.
Church. Well, yeah, he split England from the Catholic Church because he didn't believe in the divorce rules of the Catholic Church. He wanted to divorce his wife, and the Catholic Church said no to that. And he was like, well, actually, I'm going to start a new denomination.
Oh, wow. Okay, so what happened in cause of that was he basically decimated not all, but he tried to, as many Catholic, like, churches and monasteries and abbeys as he could, and that in hand led to a bunch of ruined abbeys around England. And like I was saying before, like you saw the Whitby Abbey before, and they're just everywhere, and it's the same story. You can kind of see only the strongest parts of the church survived.
Yeah.
And in York is a good example of that, because here we have the York Minster. This is a photo I took from the top of the tower, and looking on in the distance, you can see here the ruins of the former abbey that was here in York in the museum gardens, and you can kind of see this would have been the side vault of the church, and you can see the bottom of these columns that existed.
Yeah, there certainly is something beautiful about the ruins, but
Exactly.
it's sad that we lost what those once were.
Yeah,
as well.
it is sad, but yeah, like you said, there is a lot of beauty in the ruins, because it kind of shows that how much it just shows that they've been through a lot,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it just shows the history, because Henry converted the Minster into the Church of England, so
Yeah.
that was safe, fortunately. This, on the other hand,
Any monastery that wouldn't convert to his new denomination was.
Yeah, and this one, he kind of just forgot about it, didn't care about it. So yeah, this is the effect, unfortunately. And this is located right next to the Roman fortification I showed you, by the way. So also.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Also, the cool thing about England are the walls that surround the city. Every gate is super fortified, and they have these gates here, and each one is a little bit different, but you can still see the same language playing in. With right here, we have I forgot the name of this one, Harrogate, I think, and this one is a cool photo because you can kind of see the Minster peeking through. And these are the accessible, they're not accessible, the stairs that they put on, where you can literally just walk up to them, walk into it, and continue on the wall and walk around the city.
It's so cool.
And this is another one. This is Micklegate Bar. This is the one that the king always drives through when visiting York. And it's kind of cool because you can see here these existing doors on the gate, and these would have been entries to a barbican that would have been coming out of this, and it would have kind of been like a big gate, and like if people were trying to go or invade into the place, they could like trap them in there and like kill them. But yeah, kind of cool. It's just such a like prominent entrance to the city, I think.
Yeah, I can't think of any better way to go into a town, and we need to bring back city gates. I think they're just so cool.
Yeah, city gates.
Not even like for defense reasons, just because they're cool.
I know, right?
Oh,
like,
we're going to Milwaukee. Let's go.
I know. Like the third ward, it has like a nice little sign, but like we should have like a Milwaukee like gate just like this, even on 79. That would be pretty cool. No. But yeah, and then this is a sketch I did of the behind of the Micklegate, and I think it's funny because you can kind of see it doesn't look like as defensive. It's these nice windows, and that's because in the 1500s, it was in the 1600s and on, it was accommodated for people to live there.
Really?
So someone had like a little like apartment in here or something.
That'd be pretty nice.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I think they must have been like in charge of lowering the gate or something, but like it was accommodated for people to live in here. So, yeah.
It's a really good drawing.
Thank you. And then this is kind of just a view of me and my aunt. She came to visit. It was cool to show her around the city. But yeah, this is what the wall looks like. You can just walk on it, and it goes on for miles. Yeah.
Very cool.
And then let's get into timber frame.
Nice.
Timber frame, just like Kyle said, in France, it's translated over to England in many ways, and it's kind of just a vernacular. I love like England. I think they do like they start with this like stone base, and then they add the timber on top, and this is like an old barn on the museum gardens. But I just think it's a really good example of English timber framing there.
What is that place?
This is in the museum gardens in England. It's just down the road. It's just behind this wall.
Oh, really?
Right here, actually. Yeah, it's just behind this cathedral or the ruins, and yeah, you can really just
That's
walk
all
up
that's
to
left
it and
of it,
sit.
basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
So
Very cool.
this is like you can like rent this out for like venues for like a wedding or something. I saw a wedding going on there once, and in here there's like cool timber frame, the vaults and stuff. So
Nice.
it's pretty cool. And then these are more photos of York that show just classic timber framing. And one thing that they do is they'll like put this like
Is it stucco?
something like that over it. I don't know how I really feel about it. It looks cool though. Still, you can still tell that it's old and historic, but
Right.
yeah, and you can see these overhangs, classic overhangs, because do you know why they did that?
They were taxed by the square footage, so
Yeah.
but it's only on the ground level.
Yeah.
So that's really
They
smart.
found a way around it, and then also the load bearing on the edge of the
Cantilever?
cantilever kind of like brings the floor up when it's sitting
Really?
like there, so it all works out. But yeah, it's kind of creates, like Kyle was saying earlier about a good city skyline. You know, you kind of look down the street and you can literally see the towers of the cathedral popping up at the end, but there isn't really a straight road that just goes there. You got to find your way there and explore around. So yeah, just another few examples. These aren't like any specific, but this is in the Shambles, which is an iconic street in New York, which is beautifully preserved. But these two examples right here are literally just random things. Like this one I just found in a random alleyway. This one is just on a corner, and it's kind of just things you just find randomly, and it's just everywhere.
I love the little bay window on that one on the left.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
It's beautiful. I think this is like the epitome of like a timber frame house.
Right.
Like, and
Beautiful.
like, oh yeah, it just does everything right. Like, I don't even think there's a taco place on the first floor. Like, who would have knew? I'm sure that wasn't always a taco place, but
Probably not in the medieval times.
yeah. All right, now let's talk about Thessaloniki. Thessaloniki, I think, is a beautiful example of historical architecture, and it's because the Romans started off here. Well, they didn't start here, but it was always here, but there was a Roman city here, and you can see a Roman building, massive Roman building, is still standing, the Rotunda, and we'll get into that later, but this kind of just shows a little overview of Thessaloniki. You can see the wall here kind of continues on and up, which you'll see later on. But yeah, it's kind of the only things that survive out of the city.
You should rebuild that whole
Yeah.
structure. That'd be cool.
You can see the remnants of the palace are still in ruin here.
Right.
And that did have a straight road up to the Rotunda, but that's just how they planned it out. Because the Romans were more precise in planning than the English. But yeah, I think it's a good representation of a Roman.
When did the Romans take over Thessaloniki, or when did they rule?
They did early on, but it was mostly after the Romans, and the Byzantine also did most of the ruling. And the thing with Thessaloniki is it's been through so much different, like, it's had so many different people conquer it because it's a really important seaport. So at one point this rotunda was used for pagan worship by the Romans, but then it was eventually turned into a church, and then it was invaded by Ottomans, and it was converted into a mosque.
Really?
And it kind of has just been through all these things. Like, you can see right here, there's still that,
Oh, the minaret.
yeah, the minaret sticking
Wow.
up from when it was a mosque. And now you'll see in the inside, it's not used for anything. You can just go inside and,
Greece has a lot of that, man.
Yeah.
Rhodes, I think, has like some
Yeah.
churches that were like turned into different religions.
yeah, at one point the
In
Parthenon
Cyprus.
was even a mosque.
Really?
Yeah. But we could go into Parthenon and all that stuff, but that's a whole other thing. But yeah,
So cool.
this is a view just looking over the city from kind of up here, kind of looking down, and you can see the rotunda in the distance. And even today, it's still a huge shipping port, with that being Greece's biggest economy.
Really?
Yeah. So this is the remnants of the fortifications built by the Byzantines, I'm pretty sure, and also kind of reformed by the Byzantines after the Roman fortifications, but they kind of just added on and made it their own. But one thing cool about this was, in Greece, is a lot different than like a lot of other European cities when it comes to like their historical architecture. Like, what would you say was like the common experience when you were going to a historical site in France or like anywhere else? Like, what would you have to like go through someone working tickets, and like would there be like a tour guide, or would there be a lot of people there? What do you think would like the average experience was?
For the famous places, the big places, there's definitely like a ticketing booth
Yeah.
somewhere. Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah, nice. Like, do you think like there were certain countries? Do you think there are more countries that are like more prideful and like on like very secure, like have a lot of security when it comes to their like historic buildings?
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, you don't want to lose this stuff.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's the thing about Greece, I'd say, is like they have so much of it. It's almost like they're kind of don't care if they lose it, but they know they won't lose it. But like, it's like, for example, like this thing right here is open to the public, and this was like a meeting ground for like teens to like come and hang out. And you can see though, like there has been some like graffiti on the side, but that's just the outcome of like people just being able to kind of just walk up to this and do whatever, because it's just part of it.
So there's pros and cons. But
Yeah, there's pros and
it
cons.
is cool not having to go through
Yeah.
security. Like, it's literally part of your town. You can just go
You can
up.
just
and
go up and
it's so cool.
chill.
Yeah, there's consequences to that, I suppose.
Yeah, this is a view from the outside of the walls, and yeah, it kind of just has that Byzantine look of the stone or the brick or Roman like edges, and then the inside are kind of filled in with more crude
Very
material.
cool. Did they run out of money for bricks or something?
I don't know how that happened.
That's
I don't
cool.
know. I feel like these walls have been through so many repairs and this and that. I don't know. I don't know the real significance of why it's like this, but
But I love the look of these buildings that, weren't planned by an architect or anything.
Yeah.
They're just built with whatever they had to use. And
Yeah.
it creates a really unique structure and something
yeah,
interesting to look
it
at
really does.
and explore.
This is another view of the walls
Wow.
in just complete ruins, and you can kind of just see they're just slowly just crumbling. But like, this is just a public path that you could probably just walk your dog on. I'm sure people come here to go for some morning jogs or something. Like, yeah. And then also I love is the Byzantine churches that are kind of just popped up everywhere, and they're just so old, and they're just standing there just minding their business, I guess.
They're very simple structures, but they're
They
so
are.
beautiful in their form, their symmetry, and
Exactly.
just the natural materials that they use.
Exactly. Like it's a very different than like Gothic.
Yeah.
Completely different, and it was happening around the same time, but yeah, as you can see, they kind of just focus more on the symmetry, because they aren't incredibly ornate, but if you go inside, you'll see the inside of the Greek Orthodox churches are beautifully painted and are very ornate in the inside. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I'm not sure what caused this design, but yeah.
I wonder if it was ever painted over.
Yeah,
at one time as well.
I feel like it might have been like plastered over or something
Yeah.
like that. I'm not sure, because yeah, the stonework is pretty rough,
Mhm.
usually on these things. Like, yeah, it's kind of cool. Like, I like this little detail here of like a little arrow slit it's kind of like so many different stones. Like it's kind of hard to keep up with it.
Is that a bathroom too?
Maybe it is a bathroom actually. I'm not sure.
Because it sticks out, and I
Yeah,
know they
it does.
used to do
Yeah,
that
it actually could
with
be a
toilets.
bathroom. I just see this little slit here. I don't know. Yeah, it could be a bathroom. Who knows?
That's cool though.
I think so. It might be a bathroom. Yeah. And then this is the what do they call these? Something Triumph.
Arc de Triomphe?
Or
Arc of Triumph?
yeah, I don't know. This is a Roman arc here that is right in front of the what I will show you next. You can kind of see it tells a story of the Greeks' success over invaders,
Wow.
and
I don't know how those bricks on top are staying up.
yeah, I know that it looks like they've been through some repairs.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah, this is something that kind of is left in despair, but they're kind of holding on to it as much as they can. But yeah, just to the right of here is what you will see here. And this is the rotunda, which is what I was talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of see, like, it's
Oh,
just
there's the
grand.
minaret in the back.
Yeah, there's a minaret.
Yeah.
It's just grand, and the fact that this thing was built in like 120 AD
Mm-hmm.
is just incredible, because this thing is almost 1,000 years old, and its scale is massive, just
Yeah.
incredible.
Those are great photos.
Thank you. So yeah, this is what it looks like
Wow.
inside.
You can see some of the original mosaic on
so
top.
there's some mosaics,
Nice.
and it's just all vaulted, and it just looks solid. Like you can understand how it's lasted so long, and it looks like it's been through some repairs, but
That is so cool.
yeah. Another photo. And then
Greece.
the last thing is the White Tower, and this is a classic tower in Thessaloniki. Kind of represents it. If you think of Thessaloniki, you think of the White Tower, and yeah, it's kind of cool. I've walked up it. There's like a huge spiral staircase that goes around the edges. The walls are like super thick, and this tower used to connect through walls to the rest of it all. But
Wow.
yeah, that's all I have. So yeah, thanks a lot, Kyle, for spreading your knowledge and insight and showing us these beautiful photos. I think I hope you guys listening learned some things, and I hope you enjoyed. But yeah,
Yeah, thank you, Oliver. This was great.
thank you.